welcome to or welcome back to Ampersand Unique Gifts and Home Decor. My name is Sarah, and today I have a handful of items that were thrifted, and we're just going to give them a little bit of love and get them ready to take to sell in my booth. So sometimes when you find items, they just need a little bit of something, nothing real major, not really even an entire overhaul, but just a little bit of something to give them their and get them ready for the next phase in their life. So stick around and see what I do with these items. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. So let's start with the first project. It is this very heavy, it's like a tile. It feels very much like tile. It's absolutely beautiful mosaic looking picture frame. But you know how when you go to the stores and the high-end frames, you know, they have a picture in it so you can get an idea of what you would put in there and how it would look in your home. Well, because this is a thrifted item, it didn't have anything in it, and I just took that piece of glass out and used it as a template, and I am cutting a rectangle out of this cardstock, and this is just a regular piece of like scrapbooking cardstock, and I am going to use this as my background for the design that we're going to put in there. And we're not necessarily trying to sell it as art, but it will give that wonderful how it might look in your home. A new owner can either keep this in there or they can add their own. So I'm painting it with this very old, you can see it was almost like paste instead of paint, but this old home decor chalk paint. And I'm just going to use that as my background there, where I have some old IOD transfer scraps. And, you know, I can't even remember what this is the top of. If you're familiar with IOD transfers, you might recognize this. But I never get rid of any of it, even if I've used the portion that I bought the transfer in order to use. I save everything because of little projects like this. So even where I cut this little extra leaf off here that's kind of floating out on the side, I will set that in my scrap box because there are times that you just need an extra filler when you're working on a project. So I'm going to take this flower, and I love the little butterfly on the side, and I'm going to put that in the page, and then I'm going to use the plastic stick that comes with all IOD transfers, and I'm just going to rub it down on there. If you've never used one of these, they are so easy, and it allows people like me that can't paint wonderful, pretty pictures an opportunity to have beautiful art. Once you have rubbed it all on, then you can just take that extra backing, that plastic backing, and burnish it down, and that just helps to make sure that every place is actually making contact with the paper. And so that it doesn't look like I have a flower floating up there, I'm going to add a couple more pieces just to fill in the rest of the page. So the frame is outlined in a silver metallic look. So I'm going to use this, it's silver gilding wax, and I absolutely love the look of this. It's so light and easy. It doesn't give it an overpowering silver, like if you were to, spray paint it with silver. It's almost kind of an iridescent. And it gives it, this is by Dixie Belle, and it just, I paint it on there and then rub it in with my finger, and it's kind of like, depending on how you hold it in the light, it looks really silver one way and then not as silver another. I don't know if I'm describing that very good, but it just was really what this needed to have a piece of art in here. And again, the new owner may, they may have plans to put something completely different in here, but at least it will be displayed with some kind of art. And I'm going to just clean this glass really well, make sure there's no fingerprints, and then because I did have that silver gilding wax on my hand, I decided I'd better pick it up with the paper towel, or I'm just going to add fingerprints when I try to put the glass back in there. I didn't do anything else, and again, because this may be a temporary piece of art in there, I didn't do both sides of the paper. I just stuck it in there, closed it up, and it is done and ready to go to my booth for sale. All right, the second piece is a feather. I love all things feather. I don't know, I love birds, but this was, I just wanted to save it. I buy auction lots, And what that is you buy a box of something and you're not really even 100% sure what's down in there. And this feather is a ceramic feather that was down in the bottom, but it had kind of a gold that had all worn off. So I decided to use that same teal colored paint and give it 2 coats to seal that in. But it got rid of the texture. You couldn't really see that beautiful texture of the feather. So I decided to use that gilding wax and just, paint it on there. And again, I use my finger just to rub it in. And I go along the lines of the pattern for the feather. And then I also do all around the outside and along down that middle, just to really step it up a notch. And I did end up doing some on the back too, just because that paint is so matte. I don't think it used to be that bad. I think part of it is just where it's aged and gotten old in the cabinet. But it is so matte that I decided I'd better add some of that silver on the back just to tie it in. But I thought it was so pretty, and it'll look great just sitting on someone's dresser for their, little trinket dish. They can put their rings in it, their earrings in it, on the bathroom counter. So here we have this beautiful California made in the USA pottery, and I love the glaze that's on it. But it has some nicks, it has some chips. And if I were to fix those and fill those in, I would have to paint it to blend it in. So I decided rather than do that, I'm going to use the DIY Decrepit dust, and I'm just going to help to make it look, I started to pour it in my hand and decided that was a bad idea, just to make it look like the bumps and bruises, that those little chips are just as vintage as the original pottery. So it doesn't, I'm not painting them. It literally is like a dirt, but it is the pigment from the paints, and it is very strong and doesn't just wipe off. It will stain that pottery. So anywhere that there were any little chips, I just added that in and aged them so they weren't glaringly obvious. And they are on all the same sides, so the new owner can put something in that and turn that side where you can't see it. But either way, they are not very noticeable now. All right, our next item, our next thrift flip, I did pick this up at Goodwill. I just thought she was so adorable. She had these blue rhinestones, and the glue that was used to put them on there was all yellowed, and she had a couple little black spots on the front of her dress. So I thought, you know what? Let's take this little, ceramic, it's a bisque, real matte ceramic lamp, and paint it with pink. Whether you're getting ready for Valentine's Day and you decorate and you want a beautiful little cherub holding a bird as your decoration, or you just would like something maybe in a little girl's room or something just to kind of give that sweet look. So I'm going to use the DIY Cottage Color in Vintage Pink. This paint is it's a all-in-one, has a sealer mixed in, so you don't have to have a sealer. And it went on beautifully and was so smooth and pretty. And I did end up using 2 coats on here just to fill this in. It is a subtle pink, but here in this light it almost looks white. You can't really even see how pretty it is. So getting down in all the little places, just using the synthetic brush, I went ahead again, like I said, I did 2 coats. Well, guess what? Spoiler alert. Oh my gosh, when I put the light in, it looked horrible. No matter how smooth it looked, she looked like she had something awful wrong with her. So nothing else I could do but take it off. And because it does have that sealer in it, it doesn't just wash off like some of the other DIY brand paints. So I used acetone and some cotton balls, and I began the task of getting that paint off and taking her back to her original glory.
6 hours later.
Just kidding. It didn't really. It only took me about 15 minutes. Used lots of cotton balls, some Q-tips, and a few toothpicks, and it actually came right off. It wasn't that big a deal. It hadn't cured, so even though it did have that sealer. So here, I don't know why I didn't just leave her alone to start with, but she was beautiful again. So here, I love this cow, and it's really funny because another YouTuber that I follow just recently thrifted one of these as well. And the only thing is, whoever had this hanging on their wall apparently painted their wall but didn't take this down, so it had some like latex paint on it, and she had a little chip on her ear. And again, if I try to repair that, I know that it's going to be obvious, and I also needed to cover up where that paint was. And I did try to scrape it off and get it. There were some kind of chunky places, and most of it did come off, but you could still see where it was. It changed that sheen. It wasn't as shiny, so it was going to be obvious either way. There wasn't anything to do but to go ahead and paint it. And because it does have that shiny sheen, I decided to go ahead, since the acetone was sitting on the table, I was just going to take a cotton ball and some acetone and kind of dull down that shine so that it would give something for my paint to stick to. So what better than a vintage pink cow? I wanted to use something with a little bit of texture in it because I needed to cover up both where that little bump on her ear was and also where there was kind of a little bit of some of that chunky paint that wouldn't come off, and I was afraid I would chip the actual ceramic. So I added some cornstarch to my paint. I usually use baking soda, but honestly the cornstarch was right handy in the kitchen. I'm at the kitchen table here, much to my husband's dismay, and the baking soda was downstairs in my craft room. So here I am just mixing it up. I'm just using the paintbrush right there to mix it. It gives it a little bit of texture, makes it thicker so that I can then pounce it on with my chip brush here. And I'm just, kind of dabbling it on there and giving it some texture. Well, something to know about this paint is it has a self-leveler in it. So it did not stay as bumpy as I thought it might, because the paint would level and be smooth, but it still gave it a really awesome bumpy texture. And I'm probably, you'll see the finished project, but I'm probably going to go back and use a white wax over top of it. I think that'll be really pretty mixed in. The eyes were glued in and I couldn't get them out. I was afraid I would break them. So I very carefully went around the eyes to get all down in there. And I did use 2 coats of paint on her, and it covered really well. So here are our finished projects. I love the way everything turned out. And again, you can hardly see the pink for the light, but it is a beautiful vintage pink. You can see that texture in there. And I may add white wax. If I do, I'll take another picture for you. And then here is our pottery, and you can see that it doesn't look white where that is broken. And it now has the vintage feel that it always did. Our little angel is beautiful again. She does still have kind of whatever that little black spot on the front was. I think it might just be in the actual pottery, but at least she doesn't look like something horrible is wrong with her. So here they are. Let me know which one's your favorite. Thanks for watching.